What's up everyone? My name is Miles and this is the Make with Miles channel. Today we're going to be making a kendama out of recycled skateboards. Let's go. As you may know, this is my second kendama build video. Building my first kendama taught me a lot about the shape, size, and weight, and I soon realized that there was a lot that could be improved. So for this build, I wanted to refine the shape, as well as try a new material. I was able to get these broken skateboards from the kind folks over at Stronger Skatepark. Huge thanks to them for the support. The first thing I had to do was process all the decks. I started by peeling the grip tape off using a heat gun to melt the adhesive. I then used a dowel as leverage to peel it the rest of the way off. Once I'd removed all of the grip tape, it was now time to sand off the graphics and glue residue. For this, I used my King Arthur's Tools Holy Galahad carving disc on my angle grinder. The carving disc worked really well, but I think next time I would probably want something a little less aggressive. The sanding took a very long time, which was no surprise, but when I finally finished, it was time to break the skateboards down into usable pieces on the table saw. Because I don't have a large press, I had to cut the decks down into smaller and more manageable pieces. First of all, I cut off the nose and tail, which I saved for later. I then cut off the small section where the bolts go to attach the trucks. These pieces are only really usable for smaller projects like pens, so I wouldn't be using it for this project. I now had a stack of skateboards which were broken into the nose, tail, and middle sections, but before I could glue up the blanks, I needed to cut off the rounded edges of the decks. I saved these pieces also because I'm sure I can find a way to use them in the future. After ripping the large middle sections into the proper size for the blanks, I started gluing it up. I used a fair bit of glue for this glue up because I knew it would fill any gaps between the layers. I'm only showing the glue up for the ken of the kendama, which is the handle, because the other two glue ups were practically the same. If you're new to kendamas, I would highly recommend watching my first build video, where I explain in detail what a kendama is and the terminology of the different pieces. After unclamping the blank, I cleaned it up on the bandsaw and cut the corners at a 45-degree angle to make it easier to turn on the lathe. For this type of lathe project, I like to use calipers so I can reference the shape of another kendama I have. As you can see, this was very helpful for achieving the shape I was after. After sanding, I removed the ken from the lathe and remounted it in my chuck so I could smooth out the contour of the base cup. With this part done, I moved on to turning the cups, which are also called the Sarado. For shaping the outer dimensions, I mounted the blank using the spur center, and then I was able to break off the support material on either side and mount it in the chuck so that I could turn the cups. The next step was probably the most difficult, which was drilling the tapered hole. I don't have a tapered drill bit, so I started by drilling with a large Forstner bit and then finishing the hole with a slightly smaller one. This works perfectly well, and it made for a very snug fit. After drilling the tapered hole, I drilled a small hole in the Sarado for the Kendama string. Next, I used that same bit to drill another hole for the string in the Ken. Now that I had completed the Ken and the Sarado, I was ready to move on to the Tama. I started by turning the rough shape of a sphere, making sure it was a little bit oversized. Once I had the rough shape, I cut off the excess material on the bandsaw and mounted 2 wood cups onto the headstock and tailstock of my lathe. I then mounted the Tama between the cups and began to turn. I started by taking light passes until the axis I was working on was smooth. I then rotated the ball 90 degrees and repeated this process until I chased it down to a perfect sphere. After sanding it smooth, it was now time to drill the hole in the Tama. For this, I used a Forstner bit and set the depth stop on my drill press so I wouldn't drill too far down. I then made the bevel of the Tama using a large countersink bit. After drilling a small hole for the string, it was now time to finish the Tama. I've had many people ask me about Tama finishes, but I've been reluctant to recommend anything because the last finish I used was not ideal. After some recent experimenting, I found that Flex Seal provides a good texture, so that's what I went with. After spraying a few coats of finish, this build was complete. In this video I didn't show how to string up a kendama, but if you want to know how, I'd recommend watching my first kendama video. There's a link in the description. Now that the kendama was finished, I needed someone who could really put it to the test. So I hit up my friend Tayden, who's been playing kendama for 3 years. If you want to see more kendama stuff, I definitely recommend checking out Tayden's Instagram. There's a link in the description. Overall, I think I achieved my goal in making a better kendama, and I also had a lot of fun experimenting with recycled skateboards. I want to give a huge thank you to Stronger Skatepark for giving me a stack of broken skateboards to experiment with. I also want to give a shout out to my friend Tayden for testing the kendama. If you want to see more kendama stuff, definitely go check out his Instagram. There's a link in the description. If you liked this video, you might like some of my others, and if you want to see more of what I'm up to, hit that subscribe button and follow me on Instagram. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.